I've been doing some analysis of test results from PARCC, and what we're finding is that for certain questions that had lower scores, sometimes it wasn't so much the math that got in the way as it was being able to use the technology, and especially the enhanced items like the editor. Those seem to be kinds of questions that students missed a lot. And often we thought, well, maybe they're missing them because they don't even know about them. These meetings kind of came about because of that. So I'm going to first come over to show you a document. It's a handout, and it has a lot of the navigation information along the sides with some annotated things. At the very end of the document, there are some practice opportunities for the different kinds of items. I listed the question number, and here's the links that you can get to the practice items or the release items. The 2016 practice items are also on the MC Squared website, 2015 and 2016 practice items. So I'm going to go ahead and go straight to the site, which is the Pearson site, and it's linked right there. So this is what it looks like. You come up here across the bar, and it says test prep, and come down to where it says tutorials, and scroll down a little bit. Notice here there's the equation editor tutorials, and if I come over here to online student tutorials, I can click down to grade high school, 3 through 5, 6, 7, or 8th grade. If you teach multiple subjects, they're a little bit different for 8th grade as opposed to high school or 6, 7 content. If you're, some of you are maybe 6, 7 teachers. For the high school, there's 32 questions. Most of the kids already know that they can navigate by just hitting next. So the very first selection talks a little bit about the multiple choice items and multiple select. Most kids have been doing multiple choice computerized items for a long time, like especially if they have been doing map testing or any of the other online testing sites, they do multiple choice. So multiple select will be a little bit different. It's where they select all that apply. Please notice that they're square as opposed to these being circles. I have a hint there about multiple choice items, and then they give them a multiple choice item. Okay, I'm going to come up here to the review question. I'm going to just answer that question. I don't even know, I didn't even read the question, but I'll just answer it. All right, so notice that I answered question 2, so there's not a yellow dial over here. Okay, so suppose that they are way down on question 8 and they want to go back. They don't have to use these back and forth bars to get all the way back. They can just come over here to review, and it can take them to any place on the test, question 7, question 2, wherever they want to navigate to, they can get to it. Okay, another thing that some kids may have missed is the bookmark. Okay, so I'll come to the actual question, and then if I want to bookmark it, I can bookmark the question so that maybe I didn't quite know the answer, or I wanted it to have an opportunity to come back to it. So here on the review, you'll notice that I bookmark question 2 and question 3. When I'm all finished, I can come back to look at this to see which ones are not answered. They'd be yellow, and which ones I might have bookmarked because I wasn't sure. So those are just qualities within the test that are available to kids. All right, so there are a couple of others up here that we'll talk about as we go on. All right, so here's the multiple select, and again, squares for answers. Okay, so one way that I suggest using this is to do this exact tutorial whole group. There's a lot of teachable moments in this tutorial that can be used for giving information and also just for instructional practice. After they've had an opportunity to go through this tutorial, then I suggest getting them into a lab and letting them go through it themselves and play with it. Okay, so next kind of interaction is a drag and drop. And drag and drop is pretty intuitive. Most kids do this because of their gaming experience. They just, click on it and can drag over to where they want to be. So that's not too difficult for them. Okay, so this next question is another drag and drop where they are dragging and dropping items from about this question, and they're going to just drag. Here's the choices. They have 5 choices and they only have 4 boxes. So they'll have to select one out. Okay, so here's the items about the editor. Okay, there's two kinds of editors. There's a basic editor, and then there's an open-ended editor. For the basic editor, they can only enter numbers. For the open response, they can enter text and math values. Okay, so when they see this little toggle down, if they want more items, they can click it to close it. They do is just click it. Okay, so if they want more symbols, less than, equal than, a degree sign, or a pi sign, like for algebra, some of these, if they're in algebra 2 or greater, they might use some of these trig functions, right? So one item that I really want to talk about is the fraction. Okay, so when you have a fraction, if I enter 2/3, for example, and maybe I'm writing an equation and I'm going to say 2/3 plus 3/4. If I put the plus sign in, notice it puts the plus sign in the denominator. If I want the plus sign not to be in the denominator, I have to hit the right arrow key, and notice how the cursor jumped up. Now I can put in the plus key or whatever key I want. No spaces, so something that the kids may need to get used to. So maybe I want the number 3, and then maybe the equal signs. I can come down here and I can hit the equal sign on my keyboard. Okay, say I wanted the third root. If I'm in the box, then I can enter a value. This is the same thing. If I put the plus sign in, it's going to stay under the third root symbol. Okay, if I don't want that, I have to hit the right arrow key, and it should get me out of it, so I can do plus. Okay, it put operation symbols in there. Kids need to know how to get out of the denominator or how to get out of inside the root symbols. Okay, so this will clear everything that I wrote up there. If I'm doing a mixed number, the mixed number isn't such an issue because I'll put 3, and then I'm going to activate into the first square and 4/5. So the plus sign, without having to do the right arrow key, comes out fine. Okay, so we're going to use the arrow key for the root symbols. Otherwise, it's going to stay under the root, and for the fraction bar. If I want a less than or greater than symbol, they need to know that there's more stuff when they hit the toggle. Okay, so a teachable moment for an Algebra 1 or higher class would be if I hit math symbols, look what opens up, which also has a slider down the side. If I want relational functions, I hit this, and up comes approximately, equal to, or similar, less than, greater than. Okay, if I hit the geometry, I get array, a line, measure of an angle, or the naming of an angle. Okay, and in order to shut that, click that and it'll shut it back down again. Okay, so grouping symbols, parentheses, brackets, trig functions, inverse trig functions. Okay, some statistics items. That's probably appropriate for Algebra 2, like factorials, the mean. I'm going to shut these down just so that they're not in the way. Okay, and then there's some Greek symbols, alpha, etc. If they're maybe wanting to explain some statistics stuff, or maybe the teacher has taught them to use those symbols. I need to put a number in first, 4, and then hit the symbol plus 3. An equal is the answer. So when they're asked to explain fully, they can use the keyboard and the symbols to the right. If they want to go back to undo something, like go backspace, the undo will backspace, or if they think they had it right in the first place, they can do a redo or trash everything. That'll clear all. So notice these symbols are similar. The trash symbol and the undo and the redo are the same for both editors. There's a tutorial just for the editors. It is on the same site right here. On the right-hand side over here are tutorials. So there's a 3 through 5, a 6 through 8, and a high school tutorial. Next, they allow them to sample 2 short responses and then a extended response. So the kids are able to practice this. So something to keep in mind is the this tutorial is not scored, so the kids really don't know whether they're getting correct answers or not because it's not scored at all. So here's another opportunity to use the editors. And again, once the kids have an opportunity to play with it, they're pretty computer savvy and they're not afraid. Okay, the next kind of item is just to fill in the blank, where they would answer the question and fill in the blank here. So on here, if you click up, will come a TI-84 Silver Edition calculator. So if you're using a calculator, the 84 plus silver and the 84 are pretty much the same. It's just the shape a little bit. The 84 plus has some capability of color where the other ones don't, but maybe Algebra 2 might have more need. Algebra 2 would probably use it more for just calculations than anything. But if I click on it, away goes the calculator. Okay, so I can click that and then highlight it so that in the question that I'm looking at, I can see what it is that the question's asking me to do. So when I check my answer should be answering that. Or they can highlight whatever they want. And they have two color choices to highlight. So if I did this one and then I didn't want to highlight it anymore, I can unhighlight it. The next one is just another chance for them to practice fill in the blank. Okay, so this next one is a hotspot item. Many kids will see this number line here and not even think anything of it. So if they click there, the hotspot becomes activated. If I don't want the hotspot, I want to move it here. If I click somewhere else, the hotspot will move. The next question is where you might hotspot an entire region. Okay, so in this one, it just asks which quadrant. If I translated this, and if you click it, it'll highlight. That's your answer. To unhighlight, you just click again, and it'll unhighlight whatever you wanted. So again, if the kids don't know that they can do that, they may not even think to try. The inline choice items, we call them drop-downs. Notice that there's 2 drop-down menus. If students don't answer both drop-downs, they answer one and leave one blank, they'll get 0 points for the question. They have to answer every drop-down. If there's 4 drop-downs, they have to have responses in every single drop-down in order for the item to be scored. So if they don't know an answer, the suggestion is guess, especially if there's just 2. If they only know 1 out of 4, any chance of guessing may or may not enhance their score, but if there's only 2, that gives them a 50-50 chance of getting extra points there. Here's some more drop downs. This one had 2 drop downs there and 3 drop downs in the B part. So again, answer all the drop downs. They click on it and then there's some choices there. They just have to scroll down to the choices. Again, drop downs are pretty intuitive for most of the kids because they've had an opportunity in a lot of different places to do drop down menus. Line graph items were kind of like the hot spots, except they're for grids. So if I wanted to select a point, I would click it. Okay. If I selected another point, it automatically draws a line between the 2 points. If I change one of the points, this one was the first one, so that's my pivot. If I change to this one over here, that one remains the same. If I want to take them both off, I have to click both of them using a bar graph. Notice this one asks how many, for example, white dogs there are. There's 2. Each of these lines is 1. So right now it's graphing 3 white dogs and I only want 2. So I know that I have to move this back 1. So something for kids to know is that it does not automatically default to 0. Like it doesn't start everything at 0. If they want 0, they've got to pull the toggle all the way back. Actually, as you click it, it shows not only the label, but it's also showing the number of dogs. So they need to know that if one of these is 0, they need to go all the way back to show 0 on the number grid. I think it probably is more apparent in the histogram, which is the next one. Okay, so for the histogram down here, it's not at 0. It looks like kids might think, well, it's already at 0. It's actually at 0.5. So if they want it to be 0, they've got to show 0. In this histogram, when they are graphing that, I think that there's one of these that doesn't have any. This particular line is going to have to fall back. Maybe these others will be wherever they are. Notice this is select all because it's square. So they have different choices. Maybe I want to eliminate one of my choices. I can come up here and do an answer eliminator. I want to eliminate this choice, and maybe I want to eliminate this choice. So that when I read, I know as I'm reading that that particular answer couldn't be it. So I just want to just knock it out so I don't even have to deal with it. So you click here on the answer eliminator and it'll eliminate any choices that you don't want. Okay, and to take it off, you just click it again and it goes away. Some kids use it, some kids may not want to use it, but for those that get easily distracted, that eliminator is useful. Okay, another item that might be useful is over here, there's a little toggle. Okay, it allows you to enable answer masking, which will do this. It masks all the answers. It's a different way of eliminating choices. I just cover them over. Instead of Xing them out, I cover them over. Okay, another feature over here is the magnifier. If I do this, if I have kids who can't see the items, I can scan across to make the items bigger. It's kind of like a mini magnifier. Now this magnifier, unfortunately, won't work to magnify the calculator. I personally had a hard time seeing the keys on the calculator, but the magnifier won't help with the calculator. So I'm going to disable the masking and disable the magnifier. Something else that it'll do, it can change the background and the foreground. The background, right now it's gray. If for some kids they need the opposite, they need white on black. Some kids need the major contrast. They can change the contrast up here. Okay, something we really don't want them to do is to sign out. And that's a warning we might say. If you sign out, then you might invalidate your test. So don't click on the sign out of the navigator. Let me go back and change that back to the default one, yes. All right, so then the next question is a function graph system. So there's a blank graph and there's some items here. This is another teachable moment. Okay, if I click linear, it's going to give me the parent function of a line. If I click absolute value, it'll give me that quadratic, exponential, logarithmic, sine, cosine, tan, cotan. Okay, so for this particular question, it's quadratic. So if I click quadratic, it gives me the parent function. They gave me 2 points. I've got to move my points around so that I'm going to be able to graph this. I know that my vertex needs to move. So I'm going to move my vertex over. Okay, I know it had to go down. Then I can move my other point to a 0. There's some very teachable moments here, like looking at parent functions. You know, we start out absolute value. If you have used Desmos with your students, Desmos helps a lot for being able to see shapes of things. Graphing Calculator also does it, but Desmos is pretty intuitive. It's got sliders and stuff. So next question, they just ask them to redo that same function. This next one is called interactive number lines. Depending on the question, they want you to decide, is it a closed area? Once I pick that, graph it always at 0. I can then stretch it to wherever I need to be. Maybe I decided that's the wrong one. This remove function only opened once I graphed. It's not there. So it's only going to come open once I hit one of the functions there to graph. So if I don't want it, then I can click the remove button. Again, kids may not know what to do unless they have had practice clicking around, and some of them click around anyway, but to know it's always going to start at the 0, and then you just click it and stretch it, however way you want to answer your question. Here's one where they're asking them to actually practice that, or multiple choice. So again, here's an opportunity for them to use the eliminator. They can come over here and let's eliminate this one and eliminate this one. Okay, so that means they're down to 2 choices or responses, either B or D. And I'm going to erase it. Click the eliminator and then click it and it'll go away. Systems of equations. This is another place where kids may not have known what to do. It might have been the technology that got in the way. So they have a blank graph. In order to begin activating the graph, they first have to click over here, line A. They have to activate it. Line B, activate it, or solution set, activate it. So for this one, line A ended up being y is greater than negative x plus 3. So if I click on 3 and then negative, so there's that first line. And then the second line was what? Y is greater than negative 2x plus 1. And then I have to divide by negative, so it's going to be a negative 1. So negative 1. So, but before I do that, I have to, this was a less than symbol, so I have to activate that I want dotted lines. Okay, so then I'm ready to start B. So I have to activate B to enable the B function, the B grapher. So this one would be, let's see, I'm just negative 1, and then I think it's up 2 over 1. Okay, and again, I need a dotted line. Okay, so then it asks for what's the region. Okay, so if I know that it's going to be greater than this one but less than this one, I need to click on solution set, and then I can activate. Do I want this area? Do I want this area? Do I want both areas? If I don't want both areas, I just want that one. So again, they can click and unclick to tell which area they want. Okay, so here's the end of the session. So I would strongly recommend that kids come back and look at all these that had yellows. They need to go back to them and answer them because they did not answer them. Anyone that had a bookmark that they might have bookmarked, they can go back to see. I answered it, but maybe I wasn't sure, so I bookmarked it. But before they hit submit, right down here that gives them a real quick analysis. There were 32 questions. 15 of the questions were not answered. I bookmarked 2 of the questions. So before they hit submit final, they should probably have no questions not answered. Bookmarks don't matter, but something definitely for them to know about. A couple of things that are not shown in this tutorial are that if there's a little symbol over here that says exhibit, if they click on that exhibit, it gives them the reference sheet for the grade level. It'll give them the formula sheet. But whenever they see a little box that says exhibit, if they click it, that's what it'll give them. You should have available, or the test coordinator will probably give you the reference sheet. That reference sheet can be given to kids right now so that they get comfortable with where on the reference sheet certain items are. So I'm going to come over here to this handout document, and there are 2 kinds of items that are not in this tutorial that I have seen on practice test and release items. One is called a matrix question. It kind of looks like this, and they have to be able to look at all the functions and tell whether they're linear or non-linear. So they're going to click for each column. They're going to have one dial clicked, and there were no practice for that particular matrix kind of question. Okay, another kind of question that may come up, and this is mostly going to be in geometry, is a question like this where there's few or more, or they can reset. So if I want to divide this circle into sections, I can hit more and it'll divide it up into sections. If I want more sections, I can click more again. I can reset it. So this geometry question was not sampled in the release. So if you're teaching geometry, that might be a place where you might want to give kids some practice. All the practice items for 2016 can be found at this site. If I click on that site, this is kind of what it looks like. It looks like this. I can go to assessment over here and hit PARCC released items. It'll take me to an area that I can type in math, any grade level that I want. There's a key for all of those items that were released. Okay, I'm going to click open the key, and the key will tell you where. Okay, it'll tell you what evidence statement is being met, which is similar to the standards but not quite. There's the rubric, and as I scroll down, there's how kids actually answered it and what kind of score they got. This kid got 4 points, and this is their actual, it's called an anchor paper. You can use these for exemplars to show kids this is how a kid answered this question and they got all the points. For each of these release items, there's some samples. So for this one, it has the algebra, geometry, algebra 2. If I wanted a different grade level, I could just come back here and click. Okay, if I wanted the 2015 release items, I can come back and get 2015 release items. There were quite a few release items for 15. There was EOY and PBA release items. The EOY and PBA practice items are not available anywhere on the PARCC website, but you can still find them on the MC Squared website, and there's the pathway to get to them if you want to see those. Okay, if you want to see the actual practice questions for this last year, under the tutorial window right up at across the top, there's under test prep, go to practice tests, and if you go to math, it'll open up to all the practice tests. So here's Algebra 1. There's all these sections, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, down here. Answer keys for the computer-based and for the paper pencil ones. So if you have an opportunity to take your kids to a lab, I would suggest using the computer-based, but if for some reason you don't have lab capability, I would go to the paper pencil version. Okay. And this one will walk you right through, again, exactly what we did before, only just for Algebra 1 specifically. Okay, so here's a drag and drop as the very first one. Drag and drop all the zeros of that function. Second one is another, see how there's a matrix one that wasn't shown in the tutorial. And the B part is a multiple choice. So kids would have an opportunity to do these questions online. Okay, so here's that little thing that said exhibit. Came up on these. Okay, so if I hit exhibit, up comes the reference sheet for high school. Okay, depending on what grade level you're dealing with, exhibit will pop open what's appropriate for your grade level. Most teachers have it hard copy available for them, but for some reason, if a kid doesn't, they can click there, or if they can click there just to see what it's about, that's what's going to open. Most of them, remember, can do the practice items even from their phones, or if they have iPads or iPhones, they can get into those test practice questions from their iPhones or iPads. The practice tests are broken down by algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. And integrated math. Some schools are doing integrated math. And the grade level ones also. You can go into a practice test, just 8th grade practice test, just 7th grade practice test. Let me go ahead and go back to that one again now, and I'll show you where it is. Okay, so you go over to same place you went to get to the online tutorials. Over here to test preparation and hit practice tests. Come down and hit math, and then you can get any grade level or any content subject. So for example, if I click Algebra 1, keep in mind that there's 3 different practice tests for Algebra 1. Like for example, in the lower grades, like 8th grade, there may be one where they can't use a calculator. And then it's still part of Unit 1, but no calculator. Then there's a part that they can use a calculator, and Unit 2 and 3, they can use a calculator. So you click on there, and that gives you, all the questions. Answer keys for the questions are down here. Copy pasted them 1 question per page. So if you've given them like as a packet for kids to practice, and they come and do them on the lab, they're going to see similar questions, which may not be a bad thing. They will have had an opportunity to practice it in paper pencil format before they practice it in enhanced technology format. It's almost all of them. There may be a couple of questions that aren't, but not many. Not many at all. When I did it, I opened up Unit 1 and then copy pasted all Unit 1s, then copy pasted Unit 2s, then copy pasted Unit 3s, then went to the paper pencil and found at least 2 or 3 questions in the paper pencil that were not represented by the first 3 and added them to the bottom of the document. Because almost everybody is taking the computer-based version, I figured that should be the first opportunity for them to practice. And they were formatted 1 question per page. You know where you can also find them? Over here on the website. This is the MC Squared website. If you go over here to standards-based resources and then click on PARCC release, up at the top, preparing for spring 2017 PARCC, if you click there, it'll give you, for example, that's all the practice questions. These are the practice questions that I took from the computer-based one. So this one was a non-calculator question. You wouldn't have the technology opportunities because like here, this would have been multiple select, so there's no squares. But that's the way it was formatted, and no calculators. So there's like, I think 10 questions with no calculators. And then it'll keep scrolling down to questions that they can use a calculator. So a lot of these are either multiple choice or multiple select. There's a few editor questions. Every time when they say enter your model in the space provided, if it's just like a little short response, it could be a short editor question or it could be a fill in the blank. The link to some of this is going to be right here at the very end of this document. The links to the practice items, the release items, and the MC squared link where you can get the last year's practice items, and also the 2015. This should say 2015 / it should say 2016 practice and also the 2015 practice. Okay, so on this document, if you want to practice any multiple choice questions, here's questions that would practice multiple choice for algebra, geometry, algebra from the practice items. Here's some from the release items, and the release items and the practice items are on these two different websites. Multiple select, drag and drop, equation editor questions, hotspot questions. No, notice there wasn't any hotspot questions at the high school level. I know there's some in the 8th grade test, but the drop-down menus, no line graph questions, no histogram questions, samples. There were quite a few function graph questions, the ones that allow you to look at parent functions. There were quite a few on the EOY and the PBA, but not as many on 2016 release stuff. Systems of equations, there weren't any, again, a lot on the PBA and the EOY, but not any on the not any that I could see on the 2016 releases. The matrix questions were not sampled in the tutorial, but they're pretty intuitive. Okay, then there's the link to get to the student work, the anchor papers. That's all I had, unless you have other questions. After you review it, if you have questions, just email me and I can answer your questions. Thank you.